might be able to see some of the plants are transitioning into more of a yellow. That's completely normal. Those plants behind me are actually ready for harvest. We're going to be starting harvesting those on Monday. The plant is naturally getting rid of its energy in all of those leaves and putting everything into the bud. It's you naturally see that in an indoor setting when the growers are flushing, really to cut down on the amount of fertilizers they're using towards the end, so that the end product, when it's consumed, is smooth, tastes great, is enjoyable for the end consumer. Typically with the sun, because it does have a much greater spectrum, and the plants are in their natural setting, they're able to not only create a higher amount of cannabinoids, percentage of THC, CBD, etc., but also having a greater terpene profile for the end consumer. So when growing outdoors, there are a few considerations. What type of soil are you dealing with on the farm? Is it high pH? Is it low pH? What's the fertility like? What was grown there before? What's your climate like? When's your first frost? How much rain are you going to get? There's so many factors and so much more variability that we don't really have control over in an outdoor setting in comparison to a greenhouse or indoor setting. We are not using any pesticides whatsoever, and there's two reasons behind that. Number one is because we're an organic farm, and the number two reason is because Health Canada is not allowing us to use any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides that are allowed in the indoor and greenhouse setting. So one of our biggest challenges here on the farm is actually Mother Nature, something we don't have control over. It's different from season to season, and the weather is by far my biggest concern. So some days like today, last night was 5 degrees Celsius here on the farm, which is extremely cold for at the end of September. And going into October, we're probably going to see a lot more rainfall. So that can increase our chances of botrytis and powdery mildew and other forms of diseases that are susceptible to cannabis. So it's our jobs as growers to stay on top of that, constantly scouting, keeping our eyes out, and really staying on top of those issues to mitigate them and control them. So the amount of plants that are out in this field, we started with about 210,000, of which approximately 50,000 were autoflowers, and the adjacent plants are photoperids. So an autoflower and a photoperiod, they're two different types of cannabis, essentially. The autoflower can flower under 24 hours of light, whereas the photoperiod needs to be grown under 12 hours of light to initiate an internal hormonal response to say, hey, I need to start flowering. So outdoors, typically we start to see the sun transition to 12 to 14 hours of sunlight around the end of August. So that's when we're going to see our plants start to transition into flower for photoperiod. Whereas the autoflowers, as soon as you plant them, they're going to start to transition into flower. The autoflowers were cut and harvested mid-August. So we're growing 7 different types of varieties in regards to photoperiod plants. We're growing a Mountain Kush, a Swisson, a Chester, a Northern Haze, a Nepal Lights, OG Lemon Haze, as well as Silver Lemon CBD. So we have a nice array of both high THC as well as high CBD products, and variances between terpenes. So we have some high limonene, we have some high humulines, we have some high myrcene products. So a nice big spectrum.